In the next edition of It's About Money, my guest will be Brian O'Neill, an American painter. You'll be excited to hear about how he does his craft and how great he is. Stay tuned for that program. Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nannette Nocon. I'm delighted to have my guest Brian O'Neill, who's an American artist who paints in various mediums, and we're thrilled to have him here as our guest today. So Brian, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much for having me. I was honored to be asked and look forward to speaking with you.
And I've been a fan of your work for many years. So describe how you do your work and what kind of art you do for our viewers.
My artwork, my painting is a variety of styles, it's a variety of subject matters, and I do it for a variety of reasons. I'll start with the subject matter first because it's the most obvious. I do very representational, very realistic oil painting, which ranges from figurative paintings to florals to landscapes. Usually a figure in a landscape, a still life floral. Sometimes they're interestingly and uniquely combined together. But I also create very abstract work that is non-representational. It really is, it's my way of abstracting the natural landscape around us so people will be able to recognize in them horizon lines, a lot of texture. I work a lot with the elements of fire, air, water, all the natural elements that are around us that really do inspire me so much. And I think people really do relate to them because people can find in them the natural world, whether it's not so obvious as a horizon line, but there's always a sense and a feeling in them that they have felt this feeling while looking at a sunset or sunrise, an ocean, or something like that.
No, that's lovely. So poetic.
Thank you.
So what type of training did you go through to get to where you are?
Well, that's, how much time you got? That really is a lifetime experience. It really is. It's, you know, I certainly will answer that in terms of technical training. But there's also the training that happens as a young artist growing up. You know, this is something that I've always done. It is something that was always an integral part of who I am as a human being. And I'll be honest, for years I really took it for granted because I thought other people could just do this. Mm-hmm. It was very easy for me and very natural for me to see beauty and be able to render it and create it with my hands. You know, all through high school I was known as the kid who could draw really well or paint really well, and I was entirely self-taught for many, many years. It wasn't until, and had a successful career as well as a full-time professional artist. And it wasn't until about 6 or 7 years ago now that I really wanted to go further and deeper into my technical abilities as a realism painter. So I sought out the training in a private studio in Pennsylvania. The artist's name is Anthony Waichulis, who's a wonderful realism trompe-l'oeil painter. And I completed a 4-year program based on drawing skills, painting skills, geometry, light phenomena. And that was incredibly transformative to my abilities. And what that did is it gave me a set of tools. It gave me options. Whereas before I had an image in my mind of what, oh God, I really want to paint that really technical, complex still life painting. And you know, it would be similar to somebody who had a natural ear for music and they could sit down at a piano and sort of figure something else out and then go to a guitar and figure it out over there. But it would take a lot of searching to get to the right note, to get to the right chord progression. It's the same thing in painting. It's problem solving. And what I really needed somebody to kind of pull back a curtain and go, oh, here's that thing that was always there, but you know, you don't use it like that, use it like this. And that was, that continues to be a really rewarding thing.
Well, I love the way you dissected that and really reflected on how you want to take your career, your craft to another level.
Well, there's personal responsibility. You know, there's absolute personal responsibility, whether you're a fine artist, a visual artist like myself, or whether you're a singer, or whether you're an accountant, or whether you own a landscaping company.
Sure, yes.
You know, there's a concentrated study of an art form, and, you know, there's natural ability. And when you have diligence and when you have dedication and you bring those things together with a good business sense, then you're really setting yourself up for success.
Oh, I love it. I love your perspective. It's great. It's really right brain, left brain talking to each other.
Yeah, you have to have a little both.
So you said that you've always known that you were known. You've always been known as a great artist. You could make a picture, draw it, replicate it. And so, how little were you when you started drawing? I mean, when you like?
I was very young. It was kindergarten.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I actually still have my kindergarten report card where in the first quarter, I think it was quarters, it was commented that, Brian's very good at art and this should be strongly encouraged.
Oh, wow. I love that.
So, yeah, and my parents did. They did strongly encourage it, and they were very supportive in very wonderful ways. And, I was very close to my mother's parents, my grandparents, and I would draw and design holiday cards to send to them instead of buying one.
Oh, my.
So it was always part of something I did to be able to connect to others.
Uh-huh.
And that hasn't changed. It still comes from the same place as, that 6-year-old kid who found something inside himself to be able to connect emotionally to somebody. And my art today still, I hope and believe that it still achieves the same thing.
No, just curious, if you look back at any of those drawings?
I have them.
Oh, you have them?
I have
Oh,
them.
what
I'm
a
very,
gift.
very, it is a gift. I'm very grateful. My grandmother saved everything.
Oh.
And all the cards and notes and letters that I sent her as a small boy. She saved all of them, and after she died in the early 90s, they were given to me later, a few years later. My mother had gotten them, and yeah, I cherish them.
Yeah, the best inheritance.
They're
really.
pretty funny too. I mean, some of them are ridiculous.
What was I thinking?
Yeah, exactly. Really, you spell like that?
Oh, that's yeah. At least you recognize it
Yeah.
now. Some people still don't. So, what has your inspiration been? I mean, you talked about the feelings in an abstract way, but how do you? What's been your inspiration as a young person and then now?
Oh wow. I'll talk about now specifically. I think as a young person, I didn't know that it was inspiration. I didn't know that there was a name for that feeling.
I see.
I didn't, what no child does. I mean, you put a box of crayons down in front of a kid and they just have at it.
You're right.
And so there's a carefreeness and a freedom to just express and explore and create. Later on in life, as a young adult and as an adult, I was really influenced a lot by nature. My dad was a big outdoorsman. Well, he still is. He's still alive. And, my brothers and I were exposed to a lot of that. And, just the natural beauty of the world and changing lights and shifting lights on top of, shifting light on top of form, whether it was a tree or a rock or a person. I would see it as like I have clear memories of dissecting layers of color and in my mind sort of computing how could I replicate that. So it was a really interesting thing, and I still think the same inspiration, I still get that same sense of inspiration, and it's this sort of invisible force or push to capture that and render it to the best of my ability and put it down on something tangible to share with other people.
That's great to be able to express that from your mind into something that others can enjoy. Now, how has your art evolved over time?
Well, certainly the obvious would be the technical ways. I think that it is very much learning to speak a language. It's very much like learning to be able to speak a universal language that someone here in Rochester could read and understand what's in this painting equal to somebody in Australia or Africa, because the language that an artist used to create is it comes from the heart, so it's not a verbal thing. It's a visual thing, and it's an emotional thing. It's a sensory thing. It's a tactile thing. All of those things, and it has evolved in sort of fine-tuning a little bit, understanding what works, what doesn't work. That's it's really paramount to an artist's success to be able to be honest with oneself. That not every painting is going to be a masterpiece. In fact, they're few and far between. So, you know, to look at the paintings that are not successful and understand why. You know, that is a really important evolution, to be able to have that self-searching honesty in there and say, okay, well, this didn't work, why didn't this work? This seems to sell really well, why? What is it in that painting that is connected to the people that are reacting to it? And then to explore that on an internal level and to maintain the difference of not mass producing it. You know, that's very important to me as well, as a fine artist, as a painter, as a creative person, that I'm not mass producing sofa paintings. It's not who I am, it's not who I do, it's not what I do. There was a period where I could have easily gone down that road and taken the paycheck, and I chose to not do it because it would not, in the long run, have been fulfilling. It would not have been sustainable.
I love it. Have you always been that critical and breaking things down? Or
I'm very analytical.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very, yes, I'm very analytical. I'm very intuitive, and I'm always sort of weighing the options of things. Maybe it's because I'm a Libra. I don't know. It's like the scales. It's always up and down, back and forth. Sort of looking for harmony, looking for balance, looking for. Trying to be able to see the positive in things while being honest about what wasn't successful. And even in the paintings that weren't successful, you know, when I teach, and I do teach at my studio in the Hungerford building on East Main Street, with each one of my students, whether it's my full-time students or a workshop that I'm doing, it's, you know, to find one thing that's successful about this and then expand upon that. There has to be something successful in there. But the very fact that you sat down in that chair and you picked up that pencil, you picked up that paintbrush, there is success already intrinsically in the act of doing that. So celebrate that and use that to go forward. It's the only way you're going to be able to go forward with any kind of success.
That's great. I love your critical mind. It's just fantastic. Now, your work has been showcased in many different galleries across the country, in Canada, in Japan, and you also received many awards, which I think is great because your work is just so fine. How do the exhibitions and competitions work? I mean, how do you even find out about them, or do they seek you out? How does that?
It's a little of both. It's definitely a little of both. There are many wonderful websites that will list all exhibition opportunities coming up. There are magazines that will do that. As far as there are competitions that are strictly only online competitions, so that it's just the image. You know, you're just emailing in images, and then they're juried from that, and then hopefully they'll be produced in a magazine or showcased online. There are other competitions where you physically have to send the artwork to it. There is so many variables in that, and it's something that artists need to be mindful of and aware of, that they don't have to jump at every opportunity of those things, because some of them are not legitimate. And it's really important to be mindful about those things and to ask other artists advice. Have you heard about this competition? Have you gotten this email? You know, there are a lot of scam emails out there asking for high resolution images immediately and then they take them and then they reproduce them.
Oh my goodness.
So
wow.
There's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens. But there's also a lot of very legitimate, wonderful opportunities as well. And like, for example, I had a painting, a pastel still life painting in the Naples Museum of Art in Florida for an international floral competition about 4 or 5 years ago. And that was a huge honor, you know, and that was through an ad I saw in a magazine. And then was able to enter it, and you know, from thousands of works, they only selected 75, and then from 75, they only gave out 10 awards. Mine was one of them, and then it went on a 3-year national museum tour from that point. Had I not taken the initiative to do that, none of that would have been available.
Sure.
And I say this to my students and other artists all the time, you know, later is now. If you say, oh, I'll do it later, well, no, later is now. Do it now. It's about being motivated to take the risk and to try it.
That's great. It's been interesting. We'll take a short break.
Okay.
My guest is Brian O'Neill, and we're hearing about his great work about being an artist and how he got there. We'll be right back. And we're back. I'm Nannette Nocon. It's about money. My guest is Brian O'Neill, an American artist. So Brian, thanks again for being here.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. You've won many awards, and you know how to market your work, and you're fantastic at it. Tell me about the extent of your social media presence. When I Google Brian O'Neill, there's a lot that comes up there. And so tell me how you've been able to manage your exposure in the digital world. And
Yeah, it's really important for an artist to become aware and adept at social media and having a website and all of those different types of things. So I have a website that I try to keep updated as much as possible with upcoming events, new images, upcoming opportunities to study with me in workshops and stuff like that. Certainly a Facebook account is wonderful. I certainly have a private account, but then I also have a profile specifically for my studio. There's Instagram, there's Tumblr, there's Pinterest, there's Houzz, there's so many things you can do. There's blogs, there's tons of those types of things. And it's really important to be honest, just like I was speaking about earlier, honest with oneself about which work is good and great and which really doesn't need to be seen. Not that it's not important. It is important to have work that maybe is a little bit challenging. It doesn't mean that I have to start uploading pictures of it to Facebook. I tell students that a lot, that really be careful when you're putting work in progress pieces, it's in progress up on the internet. Is it at a point where you feel like you could have someone come in and look at it? Because you're now inviting the world to look at it. And I think in this world, this digital age of where everything is so instantly accessible, we take a picture on our phone, we take a video on our phone, and boom, it's shared. We forget, and especially as artists, that when that wasn't available, we had other artists that we respected come into the studio and say, what's your opinion on this and that? And, we can still do that. We don't need to have this instant gratification of, oh, this got 100 likes.
Yeah.
Well, so what? It still needs to be good work. And it's important to do that because galleries do look at Facebook. Gallery directors and owners definitely go through Facebook and look at artist groups and pages and stuff like that. And I have been contacted from galleries and collectors from putting work on Facebook and other social media. And I'm very careful about what work goes up and at what stage do I allow it to be seen by the public.
That's fantastic. Now, do you remember the first artwork you sold?
Yes, I do. And I hope my high school diploma won't be taken away because of this, because it wasn't actually a sale. It was a bit of a barter. It was my chemistry teacher who I was on the verge of passing or failing chemistry. And imagine an artist not passing chemistry. I know that's a stretch. And I had a painting that he really, really loved. He said, you could just give me that painting. And I did. And, I passed chemistry.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but it was around that time, it was right after high school, someone wanted me to do a painting of their dog or something, and, or it was, or their child or something like that. And it was, sometimes it was $25, and sometimes it was $200, but it was it wasn't a lot,
And do you look back and you say, "Gee, I didn't charge enough," or how did you even come up with the price? Was it emotional, or it was just like, "Oh, I like this person, I won't charge them that much"?
Yeah, that's a really excellent question, and it brings up a whole other conversation of artists placing value on their work and how to charge for a painting. And certainly there is a way to calculate materials, hours spent on it, so forth and so on. But really, at the end, it's what someone's willing to pay for it is. And as an artist's career develops, and as my career has developed, and my resume has gone from here to here, it's there's a proven record. There's a history of sales based on museum shows, based on gallery sales, based on private collectors, based on commissions, all of those types of things that says a painting of this size and of this complexity is currently selling and valued at X price, whereas before I didn't have that history. I had to create it. It didn't exist yet. So, of course, the prices were much lower. It was, I can remember selling something for like $150, and it was just a simple kind of little landscape painting. And, I was thrilled. I was thrilled at it, and it was wonderful at the time. And it's about taking something that was a hobby, even though I only ever saw it as who I am as a person, but I hadn't transformed that into a profession and into a career. And if you're going to do this professionally as a career, you have to treat it as a business and have value in the product that you're creating.
And is that self-taught to think that way, or did you seek the advice of somebody like, I need to think about my art at the business level?
I think that, no, I didn't seek somebody for that. I think I experienced that through many years of not experiencing art as a profession and being not happy about that, about working in other jobs and other professions. And while I was very good at them, I have good people skills, and I have good organizational skills and managerial skills, and balancing the books in someone else's business. And suddenly it occurred to me that wait a minute, why am I not doing this for myself? I have all of these skills. If I can do this for this other thing and this other person, I'm certainly able to turn it inwards and to create a business for myself as a creative person. When I had done that, it wasn't really in the fine art that we're talking about now. I had made the transition into decorative art first. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s, decorative painting was very popular, faux finishes, trompe-l'oeil murals and such in businesses and homes. And when I was living on Long Island, I began doing that while I was working as a dog groomer, which is what I did for many years. And kind of doing both at the same time. And when I realized, wait a minute, I can actually do this as a career. I'm allowed to have a career as a creative person. I have to be the one to take the steps to do it. And I think I kind of, to answer your question specifically, I grew up with a very kind of immigrant worker mentality, because my dad was not born in America. My dad was born and raised in Ireland and didn't move here until he was in his 20s. And my brothers and I, we really did grow up with a very strong work ethic, albeit from him it was much more connected to the land, and he's a very talented carpenter, so working hard in that way. But there was always this emphasis on your responsibilities to work. And that, I think, carries through to this day.
That's fantastic. You're right, that's never taken away from you, that work ethic.
No, it can't. I mean, even having a newspaper route, at 12 years old, I'm mowing lawns in the neighborhood. If I wanted to buy something, I had to use that money. So I understood that if I do this thing, I can obtain that other thing.
Now, you do your art in Rochester, New York. You live in Rochester, New York. And how do you find the community in terms of its support of your art?
I think it's great. I definitely think it's great. I think there's a lot of wonderful opportunities out there for all levels of creativity and for art, and I think that's a really important distinction. Not everybody needs to be a professional full-time working artist to experience the joy of art and experiencing other people experiencing their art. You know, there's certainly Clothesline Festival, there's Cornhill Festival, which is where I live, and it's a lot of fun. And there's things like that, but there's also wonderful organizations and art groups around the area. I'm on the board of directors at the Rochester Art Club, which is the second oldest art club in the country, second only to Salmagundi Club in New York City. It was developed and started in 1877. And that's here in Rochester, and its studio is at the Hungerford Building, one flight up, literally right above my studio in the Hungerford Building. And there's many of exhibition opportunities for artists as members to take part in these art clubs. For myself personally, it's really important for me to be part of a community of other artists. Artists like to be around other artists. And whereas a lot of the work is made in solitude, and that's really important. I know for myself I can spend a lot of time in my head and thinking about how I want to deal with something and do and create something, and that's necessary. But it's also really important to be surrounded by other creative people and to see what they're doing, and it's a wonderful community for that.
That's fantastic. That's great. So what were some of the things that you know now that you wish you had known? Like artists are viewing our show and wondering, gee, how could I be like him? What are the things that you say, oh, these are things I wish I had known then?
I wish I had known when I was younger and really just starting out that it's okay to walk away from something. I think that's really important. I think a lot of artists and a lot of artists don't realize that they don't have to take every single thing that's asked of them or handed to them. That you can actually weigh your options, just like any other career trajectory. You know, while it's important to take opportunities to build a resume, to build experience, and build technical skill, and all of those things, and to sell the painting for $100, you know, when you think you should be selling it for $5,000, when you're just starting out. You know, I look back on it now, and you know, I think a lot of artists have this common belief about themselves, about who they are and what they do, that, oh, I should just be lucky if somebody finds value in this. So, you know, please pay attention to me, that kind of thing. And I certainly had that for years. I wish I would have known back then that I didn't have to approach this with such a feeling of desperation at times, and that I could have had a little bit more confidence in myself and my abilities, and not be so fearful of being seen as an artist. It's a very interesting thing, just like I spoke about. Artists create in places that are very safe little environments. And I'm not talking about physical space, I'm talking about a space of creative intimacy. And but then we have to put it out there to the world, and for them to either like it, love it, judge it, hate it, buy it, not, walk past it. You have no control over that. You have absolutely no control over that. You can only make the best work possible and market it and present it in the most professional way possible. You know, I wish I would have known back then that that every time someone said no to something, what that really meant was there's just something better waiting. That there really is no such thing as no. There really isn't. I am deeply connected spiritually and emotionally and personally to art and creativity and what I do. And if that is the case, then there's no such thing as no. There's more, there's yes, there's something better waiting. But, you know, not to take it so personally if I don't get into a competition, if I don't win this award, if this painting doesn't sell. It's okay. It'll all work out.
Yeah, I love the way you think critical, and then you're also looking at very reflective. It's fantastic. I wish I had more time because I have lots of questions to ask you. But
we could do another one.
Yes, for sure. But I want to thank you for being
Thank
a
you.
guest. It's been very enlightening and inspiring, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
And thanks our viewer for joining us today. My guest has been Brian O'Neill, an American artist. Until next time, I'm Nannette Nocon.